60 million years ago, following the mass extinction of the dinosaurs, giant snakes roamed the Americas. The biggest of these snakes was known as Titanoboa, and it was just as terrifying as it sounds. Related to modern-day boa constrictors, Titanoboa was a monster. Thankfully, Titanoboa went extinct. But what if it didn't? That's exactly what we're going to talk about right now on Life's Biggest Questions. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that asks the questions everyone else is too afraid to ask. I'm your host, Charlotte Dobre, and if you enjoy our content, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Is there anything scarier than a gigantic snake? Maybe me when I wake up in the morning. A team of scientists found a Titanoboa fossil at an open-pit coal mine in Colombia. The Titanoboa makes modern-day anacondas look like toys. According to fossils, Titanoboa was 12.8 meters or 42 feet long and weighed about 1,100 kilograms or 2,500 pounds. But because snake fossils are extremely hard to find, it's not completely out of the question that it could have grown to be even larger. It's believed that Titanoboa ate large turtles and Crocodilomorpha, which were essentially giant crocodiles. The Titanoboa lived in what is believed to have been the first recorded neotropical forest that ever existed, where Central and South America exist today. How did Titanoboa get so big? Well, back during the Paleocene era, the Earth was quite a bit warmer. The average temperature of its habitat was on average about 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm climate allowed for cold-blooded snakes to grow very large, much larger than any snake we currently know of. Even to this day, as you move away from the equator, ectothermic animals decrease in size. Titanoboa became the rainforest's top predator, and for good reason. It is the biggest snake to ever have lived. Titanoboa killed its victims using asphyxiation, where it wrapped itself tightly around its prey and squeezed until its prey suffocated. Once you're in Titanoboa's mouth, there is no escape. Row upon row of sharp, curved teeth that point to the rear of its mouth keep the prey moving toward the stomach. Titanoboa slithered around in water and swamps. Thankfully, it began to go extinct toward the beginning of the Miocene era. But now that you know a little about Titanoboa, let's talk about what would happen if it never went extinct in the first place. First things first, because Titanoboa would need to live in warmer climates, it would only be able to survive in rainforests near the equator. This would be good news for everyone who lived farther north or south of the equator. It would, however, mean bad news for any Central and South Americans that lived anywhere near the habitat of the Titanoboa. Indigenous people in the area like the Aztecs and the Incas probably would have regarded Titanoboa as a god and would have made sacrifices to it. That is, if Titanoboa didn't prey on them. Perhaps Incas or Aztecs wouldn't have even existed. As Titanoboa hunted mostly in water, a way for forest-dwelling people to escape it would be to build their homes in trees. The entire history of Central American indigenous peoples might be different. In modern times, there would of course be hunters who would try to track down Titanoboa for various reasons, perhaps even for food. Titanoboa meat would be considered a delicacy, one food connoisseurs would be eager to put on their plates. But catching a Titanoboa would not be easy. Navigating the difficult, swampy terrain of the rainforest would be, needless to say, hard. But one thing you could do to lure it close would be to set a trap. Crocodiles, the Titanoboa's main food source, also lived until modern day. Set a trap with a crocodile and wait for a boa to come to you. Once it devoured its meal, like most snakes, it would be tired and less likely to attack. This would be the perfect time to strike. At the same time, countless books and television shows would be made about the Titanoboa. Nature shows like BBC's Planet Earth would do everything in their power, even risk lives to get footage of it. It's not likely that it would be kept in zoos. After all, it's huge and it would have to be fed crocodiles. No one knows exactly why Titanoboa went extinct. The main theory is that the temperature of the earth began to cool. The hotter the temperature, the bigger the snake. But the same is true for the opposite. This is because in places where the temperature is constantly hot, the metabolism of reptiles operates sufficiently. The bigger a snake gets, the more energy it needs to sustain it. But once the global temperature began to drop, the Titanoboa's metabolism could not adjust, and eventually, it went extinct. And I'm not mad about it. I don't know about you, but even small snakes scare the crap out of me. For now, I'm Charlotte Dobre, and you've been watching Life's Biggest Questions.
Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. The Megalodon was an enormous aquatic carnivore from the early Miocene era to the end of the Pliocene. It was a super predator that preyed on everything from whales to turtles, using his powerful jaws to bite through just about anything in the sea. But what if these enormous beasts didn't go extinct 2.6 million years ago, but remain to this day? Let's explore. By the way, while this is in no way related, if you happen to be a fan of Fortnite, the new game sweeping the world, head on over to Fortnite Central. It's a new sister channel that talks about all things Fortnite. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if Megalodons didn't go extinct? First of all, let's go over some quick facts about Megalodons so we're all on the same page. The name Megalodon comes from the Greek meaning big tooth, and with teeth over 6 inches in length, the name does not lie. The Megalodon looks something like a beefed up great white shark, which is part of why some scientists believe them to be closely related. Reaching roughly 60 feet or 18 meters in length, this beast would be among the largest in the ocean, even longer than a city bus. Due to its powerful jaws, it's able to bite with over 180 newtons of force, which is why it's believed that the Megalodon attacked its prey from the side, biting through its body into the vital organs, rather than attacking from beneath like a great white shark. This creature was built to hunt and was an extremely successful predator, preying mostly on large creatures like whales, seals, and giant turtles. But if these creatures were so incredibly fit for their surroundings, how did they end up going extinct? Let's look into it, since this could help us understand them and understand the necessary changes to the world in order for them to survive. Climate change certainly played a factor in its extinction. Not the man-made climate change we've seen in recent years, but the natural, much more gradual change that has been seen throughout the history of the Earth. Global cooling made it more difficult for them to survive in many climates. However, as the temperature changed, many migrated to more suitable areas. Thus, climate change had little direct effect on the extinction. However, this climate change had another effect that did lead to the extinction of the Megalodon. By the end of the Miocene, many of the species the Megalodon preyed on had gone extinct, and those that survived were more difficult to catch. The lack of food and competition with other super predators led to the extinction of the Megalodon. So if we're imagining a world where Megalodons didn't go extinct, we would need the food sources, particularly the mysticetes or baleen whales, to not go extinct either. This means that not only would our world have enormous sharks swimming around, but whales would be more diverse and abundant as well. This in turn would mean that smaller fish and krill would have to be more abundant to feed the whales, which in turn would feed the Megalodon. But that's not all. The increase in mysticetes would mean that the other species of super predators could also survive. This means that we wouldn't only have to worry about the Megalodon, but other large creatures as well. All this is to say that the addition of the Megalodon would make waves in the ocean's ecosystems. Pun very much intended. But there's another rather pressing question to answer. How would this affect us? Well, if we're looking at how early humans would interact with Megalodons, we could look at the video game Ark. If you play Ark, you'll know that these pesky prehistoric sharks love to strand low-level players on islands. There's nothing more frustrating than swimming to an island only to find yourself surrounded by Megalodons. And this is something that could well have been an issue in the early days of humanity. Since Megalodons tended to reside off the coast, even a trip on a raft or small boat could lead to an attack. However, there were already large, dangerous creatures in the ocean at that time, and the addition of another likely wouldn't have huge effects on humanity's travel across the ocean. Nowadays, the existence of Megalodons wouldn't have a huge effect on humanity as a whole. It would certainly be interesting, albeit terrifying, to see a living one, but we have progressed to the point where we don't really depend on seafaring on small vessels. Perhaps there would be the odd story of a Megalodon attack off the coast, which would of course make the headlines, but the actual odds of this happening would be rather slim. And now we return to our question, what if Megalodons didn't go extinct? Well, if the Megalodon was to survive, sea life would likely need to be more diverse and abundant in order to feed all members of the ecosystem. In terms of its impacts on humanity, it might have been quite terrifying in man's early days, but modern humans likely wouldn't have much trouble with it. That said, I don't know about you, but I might think twice about going into the water knowing there could be a bus with teeth waiting for me. Thank you for watching Life's Biggest Questions. I hope this was interesting and informative, and maybe even inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you like this video, please thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below. While you're down there, let me know what you would do if you had a pet Megalodon. Until next time, I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie with Life's Biggest Questions, wishing you the best of luck on your quest for answers. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. The world can be a pretty scary place. While science continues to help us understand more and more about the universe, there are still many great mysteries out there. One such mystery is that of Cthulhu, the great power first described in Lovecraft's short story, The Call of Cthulhu. But what if this ancient being was not bound to the pages of books, but did in fact exist? How might the world change if this creature made itself known? Let's explore. If you want more What If videos, check out our Biggest What Ifs playlist on the channel. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if Cthulhu was real? Since Cthulhu isn't exactly well known by the everyman, I'll start off with a brief description of the mythos surrounding the creature. It should be noted that Lovecraft originally intended the name to be pronounced closer to Cthulhu, because it originates in an alien language that can't be properly spoken by humans. However, the easier form, Cthulhu, is more prevalent, so that's what I'll be using in this video. Which is great because I haven't spoken alien since high school, so I'm a bit rusty. Cthulhu is believed to have been born on the planet Vorl in the 23rd nebula from Nug and Yeb, before traveling to Earth with his family and shape-shifting worshippers called the Starspawn. Here, great wars were held between his group and other mythical races, eventually giving way to peace as they decided to share the Earth. Cthulhu later began hibernating in the sunken city of R'lyeh, where, according to legend, he remains to this day. However, legend speaks of cults that continue to worship the old god even while he lies dormant. Physically, Cthulhu was described by Lovecraft as, quote, a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and 4 feet, and long, narrow wings behind. It has been described as a hideous combination of a man, an octopus, and a dragon. Generally depicted as being hundreds of meters tall, Cthulhu was seemingly created with the intent of striking fear and disgust into the hearts of men. This proved to be highly relevant in the myths, as it's claimed that merely gazing upon Cthulhu would cause the viewer to go insane. The myths say that Cthulhu will eventually awaken from its slumber and will rise to once again take over the world. So let's imagine a world where this beast existed. How might it differ from the world we know? Well, if Cthulhu remained asleep, nothing much would change. Those who found the creature deep in the ocean would go insane and likely die before even telling others about the find. Even if they made it back to land, their stories wouldn't be believed, due both to the extraordinary claims and, more importantly, their lack of sanity. However, even a dormant Cthulhu certainly isn't impotent. According to legend, Cthulhu continues to influence the world in a few ways. For one, its telepathic abilities allow it to enter the minds of people around the world. Not only that, the followers of Cthulhu are believed to be constantly working to bring about the god's return, often engaging in human sacrifice. However, if Cthulhu were to be awoken, it would be a very different story altogether. If Cthulhu awoke and began roaming the earth, madness would sweep the globe. All who saw the beast would go insane, with the world quickly falling apart. Cthulhu would likely surface in the South Pacific, as that's where Real is believed to be. He would either travel east towards Chile or west towards New Zealand. When word spread of the mass insanity due to a giant elder god, countries around the world would do whatever possible to take it out, regardless of the collateral damage. Nuking New Zealand, as horrific as it would be far better than allowing the world to fall into madness. Unfortunately, humanity's attacks would likely be ineffective. In most depictions of Cthulhu, it's claimed that it would simply reform after destruction if hit with a nuclear bomb, much like it did in one story after being cut in half. Furthermore, it could be that the Earth would become overrun by the spawn of Cthulhu. It's believed by some that this alien race known for worshipping the Great One was created by Cthulhu himself, and upon awakening, he would once again bring them to life, to act as his foot soldiers and to lead the human slaves. As if the hulking behemoth wasn't enough to deal with, now we'd have terrifying, shape-shifting creatures in the mix. This would make it essentially impossible for humanity to come out on top, or even find a place to hide. All this means that humanity would be more or less powerless to stop Cthulhu, who would take over the Earth, once again reclaiming it for itself and its worshippers. Those humans who survived might be allowed to keep their sanity in return for subservience, but the Earth and humanity as we know it would likely be gone forever. And now we return to our question, what if Cthulhu was real? Well, if it stayed asleep at the bottom of the ocean, the world would be much the same, aside from the odd sacrifice and confusing dream. However, if it was awoken, there's a good chance that humanity would be done for. With little chance of harming the Great One, we would most likely either be destroyed, driven mad, or enslaved. So let's all cross our fingers and hope that this is, in fact, just a myth. Thank you for watching Life's Biggest Questions. I hope this was interesting and informative, and maybe even inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you like this video, please thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below. While you're down there, let me know what other mythical beings you'd like examined in future videos. Until next time, I'm Ron Mackenzie LaFergie with Life's Biggest Questions, wishing you the best of luck on your quest for answers.
Sir Mix-a-Lot would have a whole new song to write now, wouldn't he? I don't know if Titanoboa flows as well as Anaconda, but it would be even more fearsome than ever before. It's hard to imagine a world where all sorts of giant creatures exist, as it already seems like we've got enough to deal with. But hey, everything is changing across the board anyways, so why not consider what life might be like if we toss an insane animal into the mix? Hello, fellow friends and philosophers, and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your voice in the void, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to take a look at a question concerning a crazy snake. What if the Titanoboa existed today? Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more prehistoric panic. Perfect, let's get started. Let's first take a look at what kind of monster we're dealing with today before jumping into our question. The Titanoboa, or Titanoboa ceratogenesis, is the largest snake on record. No other slithery creature comes close. At around 40 feet long and weighing over a ton, it was an absolute unit. Based on models that many scientists and researchers have painstakingly put together, which is apparently very difficult to do with ancient snakes, this lengthy lad looked like a boa and acted like an anaconda. It was the apex predator of its era, eating anything and everything it wanted to because who was going to stop a snake that size? Its brown skin provided camouflage as it stalked the swampy jungles of Cerrejón 58 to 60 million years ago. The Titanoboa is thought to have hunted like the modern anaconda, wading in shallow rivers and swamps. It could wait for very long periods of time underwater, either holding its breath or with its nose just a little bit above the surface. As soon as an unlucky animal came by that looked good to eat, it would strike quickly and constrict unmercifully. Whatever managed to get ensnared within this giant snake's grip would be food in no time. Anacondas are known for squeezing their prey so tightly that their blood can't even circulate. So now scale that up to 40 feet and weighing a ton. Can't feel good on the old body. After constricting prey, it would then swallow it whole. Constrictors tend to have rows of thin and pointed teeth too. They use these to puncture flesh and keep prey locked in. These chompers are recurved too, meaning that if you try to pull away, you'll likely just sink them deeper into your flesh. Evidence points to Titanoboa having dental charts similar to modern constrictors, meaning that in addition to being 40 feet and terrifying, they also have teeth that will not let you leave. Yeah, people would be absolutely demolished if they came face to face with one of these. Snakes tend to be generalist eaters, meaning that they often eat whatever they can get. So looking back at the potential menu in the ancient jungles, it's possible that they ate crocodiles, gigantic turtles, immense lungfish, and even other snakes. Yep, Titanoboa may have eaten their brothers in arms in certain situations. Imagine watching two of them fight. So how did these titanic snakes end up so big? Well, the first evidence of these snakes existing was found in and around a huge Colombian coal mine. On top of bearing millions of tons of coal, Serra Jones is one of the world's richest fossil deposits. These days, it's largely a desolate wasteland, but the coal points to the region being lush and tropical millions of years ago. When the dinosaurs disappeared, the Titanoboa had no problem stepping in. There was a time where Serra Jones was a swampy jungle. Everything was hotter, wetter, and larger than it is today. With temperatures pushing an average of above 80 degrees Fahrenheit daily and over 150 inches of rain per year, there was a lot of dense, diverse wildlife. And when things are warmer, cold-blooded creatures can get bigger. That's where gigantic turtles, crocodiles, and lungfish came from. And these huge creatures fed the Titanoboa. See, when a reptile can absorb energy from the sun to maintain their metabolic rate instead of using up resources to do it themselves, they can grow much, much larger. This is why insects, reptiles, and amphibians tend to be bigger in the tropics compared to more temperate zones. No living snake comes close to the Titanoboa, with the silver medalist clocking in at just over 30 feet. Way to go, big guy. Of course, before we can think about it being alive today, we need to consider why it died out in the first place. There are two theories on this matter, but no consensus. Number one is that the Titanoboa went extinct due to global temperature change. If the warm temperatures maintained their metabolism and allowed them to grow to immense sizes, then temperatures dropping would cease their sustainability. The second theory is that their habitats changed over time. There's definitely a large disparity between today's Serra Jones and the Serra Jones 60 million years ago. What was once a lush, steamy, swampy jungle is now essentially a wasteland. The large snakes likely found it hard to hack it. Such is life. Which theory do you side with? Temperature drop? Habitat change? Maybe a mix of both? Let me know in the comments. We'll make one more detour before arriving at our destination, or questionation if you would. Let's take a look at how this immense snake was discovered. It was a lot more recent than one might think. See, the first inkling of a Titanoboa came about in the early 2000s. The whole story is documented quite well by the Smithsonian and is available online, so I recommend you check that out if it interests you. Years before, a geologist had discovered an unknown fossil and tossed it in a coal company display case. At the time, the fossil was labeled a petrified branch. Flash forward a few years to a student touring the mines. They kept finding fossilized leaves, which led to the discovery of more fossilized fun. Eventually, somebody noticed the so-called branch in the display case and had it removed for analysis. What they found was a partial jawbone from a now extinct crocodile-like creature. This got people excited as it signaled more discoveries to be made. As folks flocked to the mines, a whole lot of bones and remnants were found in mudstone. After a shipment of fossils labeled crocodile was received, a snake-minded researcher realized that some of the bits and pieces resembled snake parts. From here, more and more fossils previously classified as anything but snakes were found to actually come from Titanoboas. At the time, it seemed almost impossible that a snake could be so big, so these parts were often overlooked. Apparently, even with these parts, it's very hard to rebuild an ancient snake. It's very rare to get the whole spine in a neatly articulated row, and snake skulls are also notoriously hard to come across. They're made up of delicate bones that are not very well fused together, and it's also likely that a great many Titanoboas died at the bottom of rivers, as this is where they spent a lot of time. Thankfully, some skull remnants have been found and largely complete models have been put together. And now we've made it to the point where we can pontificate on the possibility of this pernicious predator passing us by today. What if the Titanoboa was alive today? Well, for it to even have a chance at existing, it would have to be way hotter than it is these days. Even in the Amazon, where a good deal of other large snakes reside, the temperatures would not be adequate to keep the Titanoboa going. However, as global temperatures rise and people keep burning coal, we may still get to Titanoboa temperatures. Wouldn't that be ironic if the material that led to the discovery of the snake itself created temperatures where it could live again? Classic. If that were the case, everything would be a lot more lush and a lot more sweaty, in certain regions anyways. Other places would just dry up and become largely uninhabitable. So if the Titanoboa were alive today, a whole lot would change in the world. It would likely mean that a lot of other huge creatures would make repeat appearances too. How else would the huge snakes eat? So we'd have giant snakes, crocodiles, turtles, bugs, and even fish. It would be a freaky time to be alive for sure. You can bet that if a Titanoboa sets its sights on you, you'd be crushed and swallowed in a heartbeat. At its thickest, the Titanoboa could measure up to a grown person's waist. So if it really wanted to chow down on some humans, there wouldn't be much we could do to stop it. It ate giant crocodiles, for goodness sake. We definitely see a resurgence in movies along the lines of Anaconda, with the ferocious snakes hunting down all sorts of jungle visitors. Hell, we might even see some documentaries with similar plot lines. Humans are quite adaptable, but it would be interesting to see how we all react when temperatures skyrocket and killer snakes roam the jungles once more. Of course, a lot of folks wouldn't live near jungles, but as desert wastelands cropped up around the world, more people might be forced to make the move. Then it's time to sit around the campfire and figure out how to deal with these 40-foot monstrosities. You better bring more than buns, hon. Burgers might do. And that's essentially what might happen if the Titanoboa existed today. We'd live on a hotter, sweatier planet with more rain and more giant creatures, and the Titanoboa would definitely get a bum rap for eating humans whole. Maybe some lunatics would decide that it was time to go and eliminate the entire species. Who knows? Maybe something even deadlier would take the crown without the Titanoboa roaming around. What do you think? Would you ever want to come face to face with one? Would you risk the jungle expedition? What gigantic creature would you want to come back? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more caffeinated ones from What If the Mego Were Real? Fox Jake asks, what if It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was real? It is. You can't convince me otherwise. McWriggles asks, what if when we exhaled, bubbles came out? I bet our voices would be really funny. Either that or we'd be tasting soap all the time. Adolfo Cardoza asks, what is the perfect age to go to college? Probably like 50, right after you send your kids off to college. That way you can learn all the things that you wish you'd known throughout your life up until that point. Supernova 61310 says, what if Canada was real? Then I might actually exist instead of just being a voice in the void. And Jolly Space Pirate says, sometimes I ask that question about myself, lol. Thank you, hope you're having a jolly good fun. Jolly Space Pirate, I've always wanted to meet one of you guys. Now my wishes come true. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum and all that. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I become a small bottle of olive oil, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more cold-blooded craziness. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if a gigantic snake fought a gigantic shark? Well, we have. Are you really that surprised? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, what if a Megalodon Shark fought a Titanoboa Snake? Hello, and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that imagines the impossible. I'm your host, Charlotte Dobre, and if you enjoy our videos, show us some love by smashing the thumbs up, subscribe, and notification bell. And if you haven't watched our videos on the Megalodon Shark or the Titanoboa Snake, we highly recommend you do so. So who do you think would win in a fight? Make sure you tell us in the comments below. Before I begin this episode of LBQ, I will first be taking a moment to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Fortnite by Epic Games, available for free through the link in the description of this video. Now, you've probably heard about Fortnite before. It's one of the most popular games on the planet at this very moment, and for good reason. But for those of you who don't know what all the Fortnite fuss is about, here's the deal. Fortnite is a battle royale style game available for many different platforms, including mobile, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and Mac. Fortnite is PvP against 100 other players, and the point of the game is to be the last one standing. You can play it both alone, in duos, or with a team of friends. There are destructible environments, buildable structures, and tons of weapons to choose from. Once again, thanks to Epic Games for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out Fortnite for free via the link in the description of this video. The Megalodon Shark is an extinct species of shark that lived between 23 to 2.6 million years ago. Titanoboa is an extinct species of snake that lived during the middle to late Paleocene epoch and lasted from 66 to 56 million years ago. But what if these two gigantic killing machines happened to live during the same time period, managed to cross paths, and got into an epic battle to the death? which would win. Let's start with what we know about the Megalodon shark. Firstly, the Megalodon resembled a gigantic great white shark, probably because experts believe they are closely related. It could grow to be up to 82 feet from nose to tail and weighed up to 60 tons. It had a colossal jaw with huge teeth that were 7 inches long and a powerful bite. It could swim at a speed of up to 13.4 miles per hour, and experts believed it attacked its prey from the side, rather than from below like a great white shark. Next up, let's talk about Titanoboa. Titanoboa was gigantic as well. It was the biggest snake to ever have existed. It could grow to be 42 feet long and weighed just over a ton. Titanoboa was a powerful swimmer. It snacked on giant turtles and crocodiles and killed its prey by asphyxiation, like boa constrictors, where it would wrap itself around a victim and squeeze it until it died, either by suffocation or cardiac arrest. Titanoboa spent most of its time in the water. It swam in tropical waters, and if it had existed at the same time as the Megalodon, the two could have theoretically crossed paths. Well, maybe not, but let's not get into technicalities, because this is Life's Biggest Questions, after all. Would Titanoboa have been able to take on one of the biggest, deadliest predators in the history of the world? Let's get into it. In order for Titanoboa to stand a fighting chance against a Megalodon shark, it would have had to get a devastating bite in, as well as find a way to wrap itself around it. Titanoboa managed to snack on gigantic crocodiles, so why couldn't it snack on a gigantic shark? That being said, Megalodon sharks were immensely huge. They were powerful swimmers and had a streamlined body that could perhaps escape Titanoboa's grip. All it would have to do is thrash around violently and slip through Titanoboa's coils. Titanoboa's weakness in this fight would be its length. As I previously said, Megalodon sharks attack from the side. Snakes are rather long creatures last time I checked, and their bodies are essentially helpless. If a Megalodon shark happened to come across a Titanoboa snake, all it would have to do is dish out a devastating bite to a central area on its body, slicing through internal organs. And considering how big Megalodon's mouth was, it could probably slice Titanoboa clean in half with its 7-inch long teeth. Titanoboas were 3 feet thick at the thickest part of their bodies. Megalodon's mouth was up to 6 feet across, which means the Titanoboa's body could have comfortably fit inside Megalodon's mouth, and there would be still plenty of room for chomp. So there you have it. The winner of this fight would undoubtedly be the Megalodon shark. Do you agree with me, or do you not? Write your responses in the comments. For now, I'm Charlotte Dobre, and you've been watching Life's Biggest Questions.
Have you ever woken up in a cold sweat, half remembering a dream you absolutely couldn't explain? Maybe there was an inexplicable landscape full of strange architecture covered in unrecognizable surfaces. Or perhaps there was a monster, a gigantic beast in silhouette, only explainable in segments. If these are familiar experiences, you might have been visited by the depths dweller himself, Cthulhu. Worry not, you won't suffer long. If he's reaching out like that, the end times are nigh anyway. Or maybe it was just a nightmare brought on by bad takeout. Who's to say? Let's rule that out for a moment and consider what the world might be like if the dreamer did indeed exist. Hello fellow friends and philosophers, and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your voice in the void, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be considering the following question: what if Cthulhu existed today? Before we begin, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more tentacled terror. Outstanding! Let's get started. Now, Cthulhu is one of the better known figures from H.P. Lovecraft's collective works. In fact, he might be more popular than his creator at this point. While those interested in cosmic horror likely know HP quite well at this point, the general media-consuming public likely recognizes the name Cthulhu. Most folks are aware that he's a tentacle-covered giant demigod of sorts, which is mostly right, I suppose. Now, there are plenty of Cthulhu explainer videos out there these days, so I'll trust you to do some digging if you need additional context. For the purposes of this video, I'll trust that most people sort of know about cosmic horror, and even if you don't, I'll drop assorted facts throughout to make sure we're all generally on the same page. So let's ask the big question: what if Cthulhu existed today? It's not too far-fetched to say he likely does. See, Cthulhu was once above the water, roaming the world like any great old one might. However, these days he seems to be slumbering eternal beneath the Pacific, dreaming in his underwater city of Relia. For argument's sake, we can claim that there isn't a 0% chance that Cthulhu is dwelling in the depths, never to be found by the average human. If we take that at face value, we can say with some degree of confidence that if Cthulhu existed today, not much would change. The world would still turn, people would still live their lives, dogs would still chase squirrels, the works. However, that is the simplest possible answer. It's easy to say that if Cthulhu existed, he would just continue sleeping. But there's a lot more to consider when a great old one exists. See, Cthulhu inspired many devoted followers. So devoted, you might even call them cultists. And these cultists formed groups and congregations and sewing circles, and these folks organized together and formed bigger cults. Cults devoted to worshipping Cthulhu and attempting to bring him out of his eternal slumber. As a great old one, Cthulhu once knew all that was occurring in the universe. He understood things that humans could never hope to understand. The basis of cosmic horror indeed. However, Cthulhu was willing to share some of this knowledge for a price. Before being relegated to the underwater city, he would communicate with chosen people through dreams. Through doing so, he established his cult. Word spread and cells popped up all over the world. It became so prevalent that even when he was trapped under the sea, his worshippers continued to worship. You see, the ocean is deep and vast, which makes it hard for even a godlike creature such as Cthulhu to transmit his messages. The telepathic communication has been weakened, meaning that only rarely does a message make it to the surface. That doesn't slow the cult down one bit, though. The cells of worshippers continue to congregate around the world, best known for their practice of chanting. Over and over again, they will say the ancient and unknowable words. In his house at Relia, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. This can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but most of the time people assume that it means he's waiting for his followers to wake him up. It's been said, that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. So Cthulhu isn't dead, at least not in any way that matters. And death apparently isn't the end, which allows for a lovely Cthulhu awakening to be in the cards. This quasi-immortality might actually be a draw for many of his worshippers too. If Cthulhu can live forever, why wouldn't he be able to grant that to his followers, right? That might actually be the case if you look at some different accounts of his followers. Human leaders of his cult appear to be immortal in some cases, drawing on dark and arcane powers to extend their life far beyond the span of a regular person. In doing so, they also inspire others to follow Cthulhu with promises of similar power being granted somewhere down the line. Eternal life tends to get a lot of people interested in worship, huh? And it's not just humans that benefit from this either. If you take a trip to the murky depths just outside of Innsmouth, you'll find all sorts of deep ones. These freakish aquatic humanoids also worship Cthulhu, and the biggest and baddest of them seem to live and grow forever. Even after reaching maturity, their size increases. They also tend to come ashore and mate with humans, creating strange halflings equally devoted to the terrifying dreamer. To summarize what we've discussed so far, if Cthulhu existed today, we'd have a lot more cultists and a lot more immortality, and probably some crazy gigantic aquatic beasts. That's pretty fun, right? Of course, these results only happen if he remains asleep at the bottom of the ocean. If he were to awaken, it would be a whole other story. There are a few different ways this could happen too. I think that one that a bunch of people might be familiar with involves a spiteful fat kid and some superhero cosplay.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are pleased to announce the successful merger of Cthulhu and the King. Cthulhu's track record for complete dominance and interdimensionary rule is without question.
Definitely not canon or anything close to it, but there was a story arc in a season of South Park where an oil drilling company releases Cthulhu for a period of time. Cartman then decides that he can manipulate the Great Old One, as he does with all the other people in his life, and begins waging war on the things he believes are evil. Then Mintberry Crunch comes in and sends Cthulhu back to where he came from. Again, definitely not how it would really play out, but it's an interesting take on how Cthulhu might enter our realm. And it actually does sort of stick to the story from the Call of Cthulhu. In H.P. Lovecraft's tale concerning the Cultic Creeps, a ship full of sailors actually manages to open a portal to the underwater city, so not too far off in terms of the whole summoning bit. And of course, the summoning is just the beginning. Once Cthulhu enters our world, it's all over. Without deep sleep and deeper waters keeping his legendary telepathic powers at bay, Cthulhu would be more powerful than we could ever understand. He'd subjugate Earth in a matter of moments, with members of his cult being rewarded for their loyalty, and heathens being enslaved or killed instantly. It would all be too much for our tiny human brains. Classic cosmic horror, right? The introduction of Cthulhu into our world also implies a whole lot of other cosmic beings as well. Cthulhu is the figurehead in what is known as the Cthulhu Mythos, a series of tales by assorted authors about cosmic entities in the same universe as the Great Slumberer. Without getting too deep into it, we'd also likely be introduced to his progeny, Gathanatoa, Yathagtha, Zothamog, and Cthulhu, his mates, Idhya and Kasagtha, his siblings, Hastur, Cathanid, and Nraku, and his ancestors, Yug, Sathoth, and Shub-Niggurath. All of these beings come with their own set of troubles. Yog-Sothoth might father another half-cosmic, half-human child, like in the Dunwich Horror. Ghathnathoa might freeze some folks like Medusa, but leave their minds to rot in an immobile shell for all of eternity. Maybe Hastur would leave the yellow sign all over for hapless folks to stumble upon and become indoctrinated by. So many opportunities in this mythos, so little hope for humanity. The world would be a much darker, much more mysterious place if Cthulhu existed today. I'm sure plenty of investigative journalists and scholars would try to infiltrate the cult and find more info too. Of course, this would come with its own slew of horrors and misfortunes. How is a writer supposed to explain their encounter with an indescribable being? Maybe we'd get some video footage of true horror. Although who's to say you can even capture any of it on video? And that just about brings us to our conclusion. If Cthulhu existed today, we'd see an uptick in cult activity, maybe even immortality. If he were to awaken, we'd all be screwed, no question about it. There's also a lot of room for other beings from the Cthulhu mythos to appear. All in all, we'd be terrified a whole lot more often. What do you think? Would you join in on the chanting, or would you just run away? Would a Cthulhu-filled world be better or worse than what we have now? Maybe an outside force is just what we need to feel alive again. What's your favorite Lovecraftian horror from the Cthulhu mythos? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more aquatic ones from the top 10 scary insect bites. Connor Purdy says, I've played with a tarantula hawk when I was a stupid 5-year-old living in Arizona. To this day, it was the worst insect bite / sting I've ever had to deal with. My goodness, and at the tender age of 5 no less. I mean, from that point on, I'm sure you were a pretty tough kid. Matthew Thomas says, little buggers, aren't they? They are literally insects. I mean, what do you want me to say? Little annoyances? Big buggers, perhaps? Justin Terrapin says, red wasp stings are horrible. When I was 6, I got stung on the hand after one of these wasps fell into my bed. It felt like I had stuck my hand in gasoline and lit it. Jeez, all these folks are getting stung real young. My question is, how did it find its way to your bed? Fiona says, my friends have bugs as a pet. That's always interesting, eh? I don't think bugs show the same unconditional love as a dog or a cat, though. Maybe a fish. Filio Watras says, dig dig. It's an old meme, but it checks out. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I attempt transcendental meditation, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more cosmic horror. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.